Hey, I'm Hannah, and this is It Bad?, the show where we answer your most burning cookware questions. Today, is it bad to use a cheap blade coffee grinder? There are two kinds of coffee drinkers in the world. For some people, a cup of whatever from wherever will do, and that's fine. But for others, considering factors like the beans, the brew method, and the grind are all little ways to get a great cup of coffee. Coffee grounds stale really quickly, so the pre-grind stuff you buy in the supermarket is pretty dull in flavor by the time you get it home. For this reason, we always recommend you grind your coffee beans at home right before you brew. If you've done even one iota of research on coffee grinding, you probably already know that of the two coffee grinder styles, blade and burr, that everybody says burr is the way to go. Blade grinders work like a tiny food processor with a little blade that chops the beans into smaller and smaller pieces. Burr grinders, on the other hand, work more like a pepper mill. They have two gears, called burrs, that spin against one another to pulverize the beans. Coffee pros say that burr grinders grind coffee much more evenly because each bean only passes through the burrs once, compared to the repeated whacking that they get in a blade grinder. And an even grind is key, the theory goes, because if the grounds are all the same size, their flavor will extract into the water at the same rate. If some of the coffee grounds are too small, they might be over-extracted and taste bitter, and if some are too big, they might get under-extracted and taste weak. However, burr grinders are both bigger and more expensive than blade grinders. And if you're already grinding your coffee at home, isn't that enough to ensure you'll get a pretty good cup? Coffee people can really geek out after all. What are you supposed to do to get a great cup of coffee at home without driving yourself up a wall? To figure this out, we tested 10 burr grinders and 6 blade grinders, looking at how easy they were to use, how much of a mess they made, and how evenly they ground the coffee. Once we had our top models in each category, we tested coffee ground in the best blade grinder against coffee ground in the best burr grinder. Everything else was the same. The beans, the water, the brew method. For that, we used our winning drip coffee maker from Technivorm. Now I know what you're saying, blah, 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 the expensive burr grinder won. Well, have I got news for you. Our tasters were split, 50-50, so we did it again, and again, and again, for a total of 4 tastings. Needless to say, we were a little wired after that. And still, we did not have a strong preference for one grinder style over the other. A verdict that honestly had us doubting ourselves. So we brought in coffee experts from George Howa Coffee and from 1369 Coffee House in Cambridge, Mass, and had them try coffee made with the 2 different grinders. And shockingly, they came to the same conclusion. While there were subtle differences between the 2 coffees, both were perfectly acceptable. That said, we still prefer burr grinders. Here's why. The element of human judgment is removed, which is one reason why coffee pros swear by burr grinders. If you're running a coffee shop, you need your beans ground consistently so your coffee tastes the same from day to day. And it's much easier to toggle between different grind styles, like if you want really finely ground coffee for espresso or coarsely ground coffee for cold brew. With a blade grinder, you have to time the grind, shake the grinder to distribute the beans, and visually inspect the coffee to see if it's done. And you can get a very different cup of coffee with just 2 extra seconds of grinding. So, is it bad to use a cheap blade coffee grinder? Somewhat surprisingly, the answer is no. You can get a really good cup of coffee from a cheap blade grinder. But overall, we still prefer burr grinders just because they're easier to use and they're more consistent. All right, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to ask us your own Is It Bad questions in the comments. Check out the links to our favorite coffee gear in the video description below and hit that subscribe button.